The work of recovery is actually about regaining control, being able to pick up the threads of your pre-disaster life and to map a future where you can once again live a life that you have reason to value. Being prepared for anything, hoping for the best but sort of expecting the worst, I think is the way that recovery needs to be understood. But in all of that, not forgetting that the community is a resource. And so we need to find always take the time to understand that and to connect with that, and indeed to mobilise that in terms of the way that we support this work to be done.
The coordination of recovery at any level of government, and in particular at a state level, is incredibly political. It's a relentless stream of complex and wicked problems. I don't think there's a more complex environment that anyone can work in.
What I've learned is that there should be recovery representatives in there with their recovery hats on, sitting around the local emergency management committees. We need to be constantly thinking about when's the transition happening from response through to relief into recovery, and then feeding into building resilience out of that.
Often in government, we like to silo things neatly into particular working groups, and each working group has its own action plan, an own list of agenda items to do with a particular environment. We need to constantly be looking for the interconnectedness between the different environments, the interconnectedness of the recovery strategies that we're working with, to make sure that we are always working towards a holistic view of recovery, a holistic view of the needs of the community, and a holistic strategy to assisting the community.
Quite often, people aren't in a space to be able to really hear what's said a first time, and they need to tell their story or ask their questions, and you need to be able to walk with them, listen, and then go back to them and close that circle for them.
If you want to be a good leader in recovery, you have to be a good listener, you have to be a good collaborator, and you have to be an enabler. And those three things together, doesn't matter what level of recovery you're working in, is really, really important.
The process of going through a significant disaster, then moving into relief and recovery, really has significant impacts on you as an individual. Sometimes those that you can't actually identify at the time, and you only know about when you look back. But you've got to take care of yourself, because as a lead in an organisation in recovery, relief, or in response, you need to be making sure that you're on your best game. You're going to be working with people whose lives have been significantly impacted. You're going to take on a whole range of those emotions, and that flows into yours, and you need to be managing that.
The most important advice that I would give to myself, if I could go back then, is to understand the nature of grief and distress, and to understand that it's an absolutely integral part of a process. There's a real sense that you need to try and fix things, take people's pain away, make it better. But the pain and the distress is the pathway to recovery, and not experiencing that and not sort of going through that process actually means that you're going to have to do that work at some other time. So we need to be willing to take the time to do the work, and not to feel pressured to be over it.
Trusting the National Recovery Principles, for me, has been a really important anchor point. It's the principles of understanding the complexity, understanding the context of community recovery, putting community at the centre, and also the importance of coordination and communication. And so My advice to myself is when you're working in that incredibly complex and ever-changing landscape of recovery, if you anchor back to those principles, it does provide a framework for you to walk through as you're really dealing with some of the most complex and wicked problems that anyone ever faces.